Hi, it's Lee White, your transformational coach, and today I've been talking live in my closed group over on Facebook on the topic of the inner critic. So I work with women all over the world who want some radical transformation in their lives. Usually they'll come to see me when they have been through an experience that's been somewhat transformative for them in a negative way. So they might have come to a point where they cannot tolerate in their life anymore the fact that they don't have the job that they love, or they don't have the relationship that they love, or that they are grieving for the loss of a job, or grieving for the loss of a relationship or a loved one. It could be any number of things, but when you become aware of what's provoking your energy and who you are in your life, you might reach out and get a coach. So that's how I come to be working with working with women all over the world and guiding them to their next best step, what's going to be best for where they're at, what level they're at. And today we're talking about the inner critic because the inner critic is a part of you that is never really going to make you feel great. So criticism is one thing. So people that are giving you some feedback, that's one thing. But your inner critic, some people have all sorts of names for it. Some people actually have a name for it, like they might give it a name because they begin to recognize the patterns of the inner critic, and it's like having another evil twin that is constantly in your ears. So I'm going to talk you through a bit of the strategies that will be really helpful for you in dealing with the inner critic and really managing it. So I came into awareness through working on myself and working with clients on the inner critic journey, and coming into awareness of recognizing what is the inner critic and what is helpful self-reflection. So some people call the inner critic your, they might call it your monkey mind, they might call it your ego, they might call it some sort of inner voice. It might feel like doubt and self-doubt and that kind of thing. And so the monkey mind is like, if you can imagine a bunch of monkeys like running around in a jungle where they like to live, those thoughts scrambling around in your mind with no real pattern, reason or logic, or that monkey mind does stem often from feeling very anxious, which may also stem from feeling like you're beating yourself up and being a subject of the inner critic. And when we're talking about the ego, that's kind of another whole area, but some people like to view the inner critic as being a part of that protective mechanisms within us that will stop us from doing things that are dangerous, okay? And self-protective stuff. So with the inner critic, it will never, ever feel like a loving reflection or a nurturing reflection on yourself. It will always feel more like this, okay? So you're getting ready in the morning and it will start tearing apart the way that you look. You know, you should be taller, you should be slimmer, you should be shorter, you should be broader, you should be whatever. And it will be like a personal attack on you. And the problem is it's coming from within, so you're starting to think that they're your own views. So any time that you're getting these thoughts that are like, I should, rather than what I really feel like, that should is about some sort of comparison that's going on with you that's not healthy. It's not for your expansion. It's not lifting you up to a newer, better version of yourself at all. It's very critical in a negative and suppressing kind of way. So you'll just notice me looking over to the side at my notes from time to time. The inner critic may seem like a sensible version of you, but when you allow for self-reflection, it doesn't have to be the most sensible sort of thing. You can be quite creative in your self-reflections and looking back on your behavior or your appearance or whatever aspect of yourself, your performance. Your reflection can be anything at all that comes through for you. But when it is very negative and it's involving a lot of comparison to others, that happens very quickly in the mind, that's not healthy. That's your inner critic. And finding a role for the inner critic is recognizing the inner critic and accepting that it's present and it's a part of you is really important, because when a person experiences anxious thoughts and self-doubt and a lot of worry because they're doubting themselves, largely the inner critic may be playing a very strong role in that. And if you try to shut it down, suppress it, or ignore it, you're ignoring a part of yourself. And the most important thing is learning how to recognize it and then have a different type of conversation with it. So recognizing it is a means of diminishing the power of this negative, suppressing, oppressive self-criticism that's coming up through the inner critic. So what it is it's never going to be nurturing. It's always going to be negative and telling you what you should do. So your authentic desires and that which aligns with your own personal values is not what's going to be the thing it's comparing with. It's going to be comparing outside of you with other people, other things that aren't even related to you, really. And when you exploring this inner critic and noticing when it comes up, you might like to do things like looking for situations when it repeatedly tends to come up. So it could be some people might feel like, I really don't want to catch the bus. I don't want to be out in public transport and visible like that. I don't want to do that for reasons that are kind of about themselves, not for any other reasons. And they might not want to go shopping for a swimsuit or clothing or something that they're going to be visible and feel like they're going to be maybe criticized or judged by others. Might be public speaking or speaking at a family gathering even, and the inner critic really comes up, or speaking up at work, or even going for a job. And this voice coming up within telling you that you're not experienced enough, you don't know enough, you're not got the right network, whatever. None of that is nurturing, and none of that is for your expansion and your progress at all. So you know that it's coming from a place that is your inner critic, absolutely. And beginning to recognize what it sounds like can even remind you of when you maybe someone that you knew, or a voice that somebody like a relative or someone that you used to know that was very domineering used to speak to you. Like that kind of thing can be very, very sad to realize, in a way that you actually recognize where this suppressive thinking is coming from, but then that's helping you recognize what is actually going on here. You might have taken on limiting beliefs by different types of trauma, be it minor or major trauma that's happened earlier in your life, or even you can't even put your finger on it, but you're always thinking these things. So you're starting to recognize the times and what it sounds like, and you might even like to keep in your phone, in the notes section, a bit of a journal of when it comes up, so you can really recognize what's going on there. And it'll be largely about feeling like you should do this or you should do that, or shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that, in order to fit in a bit more and stay where you are. It's definitely not going to be about your expansion and going to another level. And it's kind of like in my own journey now, I'm so beyond the what I should do kind of feelings, that if that thought comes up, I should do X, Y, Z, I know that it's not me. It's something making me feel like I should do something to fit in, and that's not going to be the authentic version of who I really am. So practicing letting go of any fear of judgment or, caring what anybody thinks is really important, because how else are you going to be interesting, unique, making your own unique contribution to the world? How are you going to do that when you're fitting in, when you're so busy fitting in? And some of us are the greatest chameleons that can just flip and flop into different environments and fit in and have a lot of variety in the way we express ourselves. We may feel like you're being authentic, but if your thought processes aren't around being very authentically you and true to yourself and your values, then you're not, you're being a chameleon. And so being really mindful of comparing yourself to others when you're making decisions about what you want to do is really important, because when you can let go of that need for the recognition and feel quite okay with any judgment that comes up out there, knowing that that judgment's largely going to be coming from a person who is judging it based from their position, their beliefs, their views, their own ambitions, whatever you being present before them means to them. It's not about you. It's always going to be about them, definitely. So the comparison to others is really important to let go of. And when you're starting to recognize your inner critic, some people name it. It's really important to not give your own power away to it and not to question your competence. So if you're going for another job and you feel like this voice is coming up telling you not even bother, you don't have enough experience, you don't have enough network, you don't know enough people, whatever aspects of criticism that are coming up, be really analytical when you're looking at that and question it, because largely it's going to be the inner critic if you're trying to make some change. Humans don't like a whole lot of change. They freak out about it invariably. And getting accustomed to change and how to navigate it is really important. Learning how to follow the things you feel like doing rather than what you should do, and trusting your own judgments and your own opinions is really vital to be enjoying your life a lot more and feeling it being a lot smoother journey for you. So the first step really with the inner critic is to go inward and do this reflection of becoming aware of when the inner critic is speaking up in a way that's negative and stopping you from going in directions that you really feel like doing. And why are you feeling bad about yourself? You know, are there things when you feel like I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that, wouldn't be possible? Does it sound like somebody that you've heard speaking before? And is it something that you can really, feel a lot freer about? You know, if you can begin to recognize it's based on some kind of past historic event, and maybe there's something else going on there that you can begin to understand a little bit more. If there's some minor trauma, past trauma there, that's probably where the work needs to be done, and acknowledging that the inner critic is bringing that up, because it's sounding like somebody else. And the comparison and the judgment, they've got to go. So what a lot of people do when they've come to recognize that they get anxious in certain situations, and to be able to accept that part of themselves and to come up with strategies around coping with that sense of anxiety, learning a little bit about how to be in the moment. And I'll get to some strategies on that for you, but recognizing that there are aspects of yourself, some people call it the shadow self, which is aspects of yourself that you're not so proud of when you're not feeling entirely competent or whatever. You feel like I can't quite handle it, I've got to stop and sit this one out, that kind of thing. That shadow aspect of ourself is maybe it can be some limiting beliefs or some limitations that we're experiencing at this time, or it can just be parts of who we are that we're here to learn and grow through. And really recognizing all of the aspects of yourself and being able to embrace those by starting on a real focused effort to accept who you are is very important. And then once you've started the work on that, looking at who you spend most of the time with. So is it that you're mainly spending time with people at work? You come home and you live alone? Or are you in some form of relationship, or you have friends that you spend time with? What do you do that takes your awareness outside of yourself? In all of those things I've mentioned, it doesn't take you really that aware outside of yourself. What do you do that connects you to a bigger group of people? Like for me, I spend time, aside of the different volunteering I do a few different types of volunteering, but I also really connect into the ocean when I go ocean swimming, which I do as often as I can. There's a whole body of work around this called the Blue Mind, which is very much about that feeling you get when you step down onto the beach and there's this enormous ocean in front of you, and you realise, you get a lot of perspective of who you are, which is kind of meaningless compared to the scale of that and the power of that. And you just surrender and take the plunge into the water and off you go. And it's a very healing and therapeutic process, as well as being great for your actual physical well-being. Doing things outside of yourself that really sharpen your awareness of you being a part of a community or a part of something bigger is really vital to helping you manage different types of worry that come up for you. And so some people volunteer, some people help a neighbour on a regular basis. And I'm not talking about doing it once a year through work. Something that is meaningful to you. What kind of change would you like to be in this world? How do you want to make that contribution? So connecting to others is a really important part that will lead you into a better awareness of your inner critic and all of those aspects of yourself that need to be accepted and recognised for what they are. So it's kind of like I talked earlier about an evil twin. The limiting inner critic that comes up is a conversation you need to have in a very different way. You need to learn how to have that conversation with it in a different way. When it's giving you the negative feedback, you need to be able to respond with, I guess, a bit of compassion for it. Yes, I hear you and I understand you, but I'm going to improve on that in my own time, or I'm going to get to that in my own time, and not just giving up all of your power to this nasty little voice that comes up within you and tells you that you're nothing and that you don't amount to anything and that you should just, stop, even bother trying what you're trying to expand into, and just being a bit kinder to yourself and speaking with this inner critic as a separate aspect of yourself and recognizing where it's coming from, but not wanting to go there or take those directives on because they're not for your expansion at all. So it might be that situation where, you're in a meeting or you're with people and something comes up and you don't say what you kind of wanted to say and you're a bit stuck for words, and then when you're driving home it comes to you and you're like, oh, if only I'd said. That is such a great example of when the inner critic is going to go to town, absolutely, telling you how you're so hopeless and you should be smarter and you should be better and you don't have enough experience and whatever. Okay, so that's where it's great to stop that negative spiraling monkey mind thought in its tracks and give it the compassion of, yep, I understand what you're saying and I see on reflection that that's what took place and it could be better next time. Now I've got more experience. Is a really important thing to be acknowledging there. And then the next kind of step is very much about being present. So as you're going about your life from the minute you get up in the morning, it's about this, a lot of people refer to it as being very mindful while you're slowing down the pace that you do things at and being aware and present in the moment. It's like not rushing brushing your teeth, not rushing having breakfast, taking time out for yourself as often as you can, really, and not racing through life, because you don't want to be the one that gets to the end of your life and is like, yep, I won, I got here first. You don't want to be doing that. You want to be enjoying and savouring every moment along the way. And aspects of your life that you can bring more present moment awareness into are just taking yourself, removing yourself from situations, be it work or anything, for a few moments, particularly when thoughts of worry or negativity are coming up. Taking yourself away from the distraction, somewhere where you won't be distracted, if it's a private room or if it's in your car or whatever, and closing your eyes and being present just in this moment and focusing on your breath. And now your thoughts are going to come up, and they may even be the inner critic. You'll be beating yourself up that you can't stop your thoughts. Of course you can't stop your thoughts, but you don't engage with them. You just let them be like a car that's passing you or a breeze that's blowing by you, and you go, okay, yep, I'm having that thought, and off it goes. So you're able to shut out the world and focus on your breath and go within and allow the thoughts to just pass by. So you don't need to do this for a really long time, but it's going to help what is called the parasympathetic nervous system. So that real, when you're anxious, that fright or flight response that's getting you not feeling great physically, this really will help to soothe and nurture yourself. the next step would be to actually do a few moments of meditation. There are a stack of apps out there that you can do that with. And I know that in my closed group, we have meditations there that we use as well over on Facebook. Lee White Transformational Coach page has links to the closed group. And with this whole effort that you take around being more mindful, it's just about pausing more often in life. So you're boiling the kettle, not freaking out that it doesn't happen quick enough. Just allowing things to take the time they take, knowing that you won't be long. Things are going to take as long as they need to take, and just really sort of slowing down a little bit. I'm just going to check I don't have any more gems for you this afternoon. Being more neutral in your response to the inner critic is really important, and knowing it, recognizing it, and using a bit of journaling to help you become more aware of why you're feeling bad about yourself, what's going on there, and when it tends to happen. You do not want to let the inner critic get in behind the steering wheel of your life. You want it to be in the passenger seat, preferably in the back seat, nowhere near the GPS. It's not allowed to have any direction of your life. All these negative thoughts and deprecating thoughts or self-limiting thoughts, really aren't helping you to make any progress or to be courageous in your life. What other way would you want to live? Not courageously. The opposite, fearfully, is we don't want that, do we? So being courageous is where you're acknowledging the inner critic and setting it aside and going with what you feel like doing, definitely. And learning how to nip it in the bud when it's trying to speak up, and keep it really contained, and changing that conversation with the inner critic where you've got some compassion for yourself, you're acknowledging what's come up, your compassion for that inner critic voice, and recognizing where there's any value in what it has to say or not, because there may not be any value in what it has to say. It may just be about limiting you more than anything else. And then letting yourself off the hook, because the inner critic is very much about you being limited. So it'll be about limiting beliefs, and it'll be about limiting yourself and your prospects, and not thinking courageously and feeling courageous and not feeling like you're enough. So your journey of self-acceptance is largely anchored in this, what's going on with this inner critic and what you're comparing yourself to, how you're judging yourself, or how you're worried about others judging you. And acknowledging the inner critic and giving it a role with a lot of boundaries in your life is really important. It's going to be so powerful for you to begin to make decisions from a place of empowerment and knowing when you're making the right decisions. I hope you found this really valuable, and make sure you comment below, and look forward to continuing the conversation afterwards here, or on Facebook in the closed group. Bye for now.